Good day to all of you. Welcome to Weekends with Alex Witt. Just a bit past 1 p.m. here in the East, 10 a.m. out west. Here's what's happening right now. We are starting this hour with breaking news. In an hour from now, the UN Security Council is expected to hold an emergency session on the fast-moving situation in Ukraine. The Russian parliament has unanimously approved the use of military force in the Crimea region of Ukraine. This after President Obama just yesterday came out with a strong warning to Russia not to intervene militarily there. Well, today, Russian President Vladimir Putin went to Parliament and asked for permission to use military force. Parliament immediately approved Putin's request. Meanwhile, thousands of armed troops landed in the Crimea region of Ukraine early this morning. They have surrounded the airports as well as the parliament there. So for the very latest on this tense situation, let's go to NBC's Jim Maceda. He's in Moscow for us. Jim, what do you know? Any updates?
Hi, Alex. Well, it's been, and if you look back at it, a day of extraordinary events that have been playing out here and playing out in Crimea, page for page, as if they were pulled from an old Soviet playbook. We start with Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov claiming that Ukrainian paramilitaries this morning had attacked the pro-Russian Interior Ministry in Crimea, wounding several people, presumably ethnic Russians. Despite there being no confirmation of that, no evidence of that, the alleged threat to Russians inside Ukraine just triggered this quick escalation of events. Russia has used this, of course, many times to justify an invasion. And within hours, the leader of ethnic Russians in Crimea called on President Putin to send in Russian forces for protection, of course. And Putin responded, as you say, very quickly, responding to requesting the use of force and getting it from his rubber stamp parliament. And all that, Alex, just within hours. Now, it doesn't mean that Putin will be sending in more troops and tanks into Crimea. There are already thousands there, all part of Russia's Black Sea fleet. And over the past 48 hours, they've been there securing airports already, government buildings, telecom towers, but it does spike the tension much higher. Now, as you say, there's going to be a UN Security Council emergency meeting on this Ukraine crisis in just an hour from now. Alex?
Absolutely, there is. Okay, from Moscow, thank you so much, NBC's Jim Maceda. Well, ahead of these latest developments, the president warned on Friday to Russia about military intervention inside Ukraine. Here's that.
After the world came to Russia for the Olympic Games, it would invite the condemnation of nations around the world. And indeed, the United States will stand with the international community in affirming that there will be costs for any military intervention in Ukraine.
Let's dive a little deeper into what this means for U.S.-Russian relations that were already frosty at best. MSNBC military analyst and Medal of Honor recipient Colonel Jack Jacobs is joining me now. So, Colonel Jack, Russia, is it effectively in control of the Crimea region right now?
Well, it sure looks like it, doesn't it? I mean, they already had troops there, like Jim Maceda said. Don't forget they have a large naval base there, and so there were lots of troops there already, and it certainly looks as if they're in control. We have to not forget that about 65% or even more of the Crimean region, the people there feel like they're Russian and not Ukrainian in any case. And that whole area, that whole peninsula, about 60 years ago, was given to the Ukraine by Nikita Khrushchev, just as a gift, by and large. And so the people who are there, they don't really feel part of the Ukraine in any case.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. The history of Russia and its involvement there. This is an area that during World War II saw pretty much some of the fiercest battles between Russia and Germany. As the people say, there's a lot of Russian blood that was spilled on the cobblestone streets there in Crimea.
Yeah, and if you take a look at the geography, you can see why that's so. The Don River, which flows through Russia, dumps out eventually into the Black Sea right there. And it's been the scene of lots and lots of fighting, not just in the Second World War, but in the 19th century as well. There's a lot of Russian history there, and the Russians feel very strongly about it.
What options does the United States have to alter or influence this situation?
None. Zero.
None?
No, you know, the whole idea about the Security Council's meeting to talk about this, we have to remember that Russia's going to veto anything.
Right.
And we make a big mistake all the time by having our politicians step up, talk into the microphone and say, don't do this because there will be consequences when, in fact, there won't be any consequences. Talk is cheap, and the best way to do anything is behind the scenes diplomatically.
Okay, to that end then, you heard NBC's Kristen Welker in the last hour say that just a short while before she came on the air with us, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel had spoken with his Russian counterpart. What do you think was said then?
Nothing useful. I don't think that Secretary Hagel has any bona fides. We have nothing in our quiver. We're not going to go to the defense of Ukraine, no matter what the compacts say. We've demonstrated already, as a matter of fact, that our talk is cheap. Don't forget, in Syria, we said don't use chemical weapons or you'll be in big trouble, Syria. And in fact, they'd already used weapons of mass destruction. We didn't do anything at all about it. This is the same. Talk is cheap, and I don't think that the defense secretary has any sway whatsoever over Russia, even behind closed doors. It doesn't look good, does it?
What is next?
I think the next thing is that Russia, who doesn't want to have a big deal take place inside Ukraine, will try to keep things relatively quiet. They're going to continue to control Crimea. The big danger is that Ukrainians in Ukraine who don't like this will start demonstrating in Kiev as they had before all this occurred, and that Russian troops will then begin firing on them. That'll be really bad news, and bad news especially for the United States, who has difficult decisions to make and probably aren't going to make them.
Okay, Colonel Jack Jacobs, thanks so much, and I'll
You're
be
welcome.
following this later on this hour as well.